for watching whenever you are watching, whether you be watching live during the stream or if you're watching this back on a watch through, whatever the case might be. Thank you for watching. Here, hit the like button, hit the share button, and if you aren't subscribed, you need to subscribe to the channel. And you go down there to that little bell, you hit that bell, you get your notifications, and then you can hit the bell again and it'll tell you or ask you what kind of notifications you want, and you should be getting all the notifications for all my content when it comes out, because I speak truth. That's what I do. And I'm sometimes wrong about things. You know, it happens. Like, if you approach all of your content that you put out, everything that you say, if you approach it all with a perspective of timidity, and you're saying to yourself, hey, I'm probably wrong in what I'm saying, then don't bother putting content out, right? You really shouldn't. You should not bother putting content out if you're going to approach everything that you put out with this mindset of, I'm probably wrong. In fact, when you put content out, you should be coming from the perspective of, I am right. Now, I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm willing to have a logical conversation with people that's based on substance and objective reality, objective truth. And I'm willing to be proven wrong, but you need to prove that I'm wrong. And that's how you should approach content. That's how you should approach content when you're watching content. Period. End of story. So, welcome to my channel. This is IMTC. This is Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Podcast, MBRR Pod. We're going to be coming up with a little bit of a change in the name of the channel. Not changing the content. We're going to change it, make a small tweak to the name of the channel here over the next week or two. And I think you guys will appreciate the name change, because it's not going to change anything about the name that you love, but it's going to be expansive, if you will. Now, some of you were expecting to see Spike Cohen on the show tonight for another episode of Libertarian Lowdown. We did have to reschedule yet again. Spike's been incredibly busy. He was at the Rebuilding Our Republic event this weekend, and then also at he was also at, I believe it was saying no to the Rage Against the War Machine. He was there. Hey DV, hey Bip, Ayush, hello. Thanks to everybody who's watching. If you're watching, say hi. Take part in the chat if you would. The chat is always fire, and I've got great mods. I've got great channel members. But yeah, so Spike Cohen was supposed to be coming on tonight. We're rescheduling. Play songs in your car. No, I don't, because then that gets me demonetized, or not demonetized, but that limits my monetization of my vehicle. So yeah. Spike Cohen was supposed to come on. We rescheduled from 2 weeks from today, and we are maybe going to be able to have Spike for longer than an hour now that we have rescheduled, and that's the way it goes. Very funny, Swedish Gamer. Who is behind you? I'm not falling for that. So even if there is someone behind me waiting to kill me, it's going to be your fault, Swedish. I just want you to be aware. Can you wish happy birthday to my mom? She's in the military and she'll be deployed to Egypt tomorrow. Her name is Sergeant. Well, happy birthday to your mom. If that's legit, I'm sorry to hear that she's going to be yanked away to go serve people in another country that doesn't benefit us at all. I have nothing but respect for military personnel, as I am a vet myself. So, happy birthday, Annie. I feel like there's probably a joke in there somewhere. And if not, you'll have to forgive me for being slightly jaded. It has happened before. Yeah, so where was I at before I got distracted by all you wonderful people in the chat? I don't know, but anywho, I'm doing good. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, and by the way, memberships. go over to the Join tab, hit the memberships, pick a level of support. I am pleased to announce that not one of them, don't tell him yet, because he needs to find, well, he'll find out when he watches this. But I do have now 2 producing supporters. One is IMAF from my Subscribe Star. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. That's why I said it that way. But I have one over from Subscribe Star. He goes by IMAV. If you prefer to use Subscribe Star as opposed to being a channel member here, let me know and I will shoot you a link to the Subscribe Star, and you can join up as a channel member there, or you can join as a channel member here. But I also now have a channel member, one of my Act Localists, who has earned themselves the show producer credits, and that is the Angry Vet. For those of you that don't know, Tav joined the stream yesterday, and I chastised him for being late to the stream, and he gave me a $50 super chat, and then at the end of the stream, he gave 50 of you lucky recipients channel memberships. And that, ladies and gentlemen, earns Tab show producer credits along with IMAP. So the Angry Vet is a show producer, and IMAP from Subscribe Star is a show producer. They help keep the things going. All of you do, actually. Watching helps keep going, and that does matter to me. So I'm, you know, as many of you know, this entire channel exists to be about holding public servants accountable, whether they be elected or appointed. In fact, sometimes it's harder to hold appointed public servants accountable than it is elected public servants, because people who are elected have some interest, some vested interest in behaving themselves and a certain sense of decorum, because they do have to represent their constituents. And when they do bad, they know they run the risk of being run out of town on a rail, if you will, of not being voted for. And you know, you look at, let's say, like, so Tim Walz in the debate the other day was asked why he lied about being in China for the Tiananmen Square episode. And he, you know, basically hemmed and hawed his way through, tried to snowball his way through it, and it got nowhere. And he's lied about his military service, about what he did and how he did it, and why he ended it the way he did. Well, Snarky, thank you for joining the channel. Thank you. I appreciate that. You did that all on your own, and I very much appreciate that. Like I said, I appreciate all my viewers, hate watchers, people trying to play games. You're driving me up in the algorithm. That's all that matters to me. That's awesome. I appreciate that. And there's Tav. Tav, you missed the announcement, I think. Did you hear the announcement, Tav? You are now officially credited as a show producer of the MBRR podcast, the MBRR show, the Minnesota Black Road Regiment pod. Sir, you, along with my friend IMAV from Subscribe Star, are the 2 show producers so far. So welcome aboard, Tav. Thank you for helping me ruin people's lives on a daily basis. So, Snarky, you missed out because Tav was a day early, huh? We're thankful. We're thankful for Tav being early. You'll wear the title as long as you don't have to work. No, Tav, you don't have to work. You just have to keep being my bro and know that I love you, and I'm very thankful for everything that you do. So, as I was saying, it's sometimes easier to hold elected servants accountable, just because they do have to worry about elections. Appointed servants, on the other hand, are harder to hold accountable. Now, they are normally held accountable to those that are elected. And so sometimes positions within the public sector can be very tenuous depending on the politics of the region. Oh, absolutely does help with my stuff, 507. And I know who you are, dude. You don't have to ever explain yourself. You have been in this almost from the very beginning, sir. Hey, bro, do I want $1,000? No, not if I have to do something strange or weird for it. And I'm not showing you my feet unless you join my OnlyFans. But if you want to just give me $1,000. We're all in. Ange, good to see you. But anywho, we have to look at, people who are appointed, whether they be law enforcement or people that work behind the counter at the DMV. And Leslie Jangly, good to see you, sir. Wonderful to have you aboard as well. Miss you guys, miss your faces, man. I would love to come over and see you guys. But it's hard to hold them accountable. Cops accountable, the people who work behind the desk in police offices, or police department, sheriff's offices, the tax assessor's office. So you're willing to have Terry in? Oh yeah, no, I don't want to ever talk to Terry ever again. Thank you very much. But oftentimes when we can hold people accountable, and see, those of you who don't know, this is what the drive type dialectics are all about. They are about chatting with you guys, but also getting to a point. And so now I'm going to try and get to the point, because I have a limited amount of time in a drive type dialectic, which is why I do them. Because I get home and I got to shower, and I'm going to go have some dinner tonight. I need a night off from the workouts. Got back into them, and just realized my body's not quite ready to hit it as hard as I've been trying. So, anywho, I say that a lot, don't I? Yeah, I'm sure Bip's got a good answer for that. He's pretty cautious, but I'm interested. I don't know who this Hudson guy was, and that might be part of the issue. But yeah, we'll see. But one of the ways we can hold public servants accountable is holding them to the law, right? We talk an awful lot about the Constitution. Man, thank you. Jeez, 507. Wow. Thank you very much, guys. This is amazing. I've had Tav, and I've had Cliff from the Vigilance Committee drop memberships on people before, but I don't think it's been a long time since I've had 2 people join as members in a stream that I'm just rambling in. But we do need to focus on the Constitution, but we have to also understand that the Constitution ultimately is a very flawed document, because it's very difficult at times to get people to be in agreement on even what the Constitution says. It's just like asking people what the purpose of the Supreme Court is, and they're like, well, the Supreme Court is to interpret the Constitution. No, that was never the intent of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was never to interpret the Constitution. The Supreme Court was to apply the Constitution to laws at the federal level and determine whether or not those laws met with the strict standards of the Constitution. That's a very fine point that people get wrong. Thanks a lot for your opinion. I'm a far better driver than anybody you know. And if I have an accident, it will drive me up in the algorithm. Thank you very much. People eat in their cars. People have conversations with people in their cars, and they're looking at them while they're talking. I've always got an eye on the road, you Karen. But when you look at the Constitution, it has some flaws, which is why things like where's it at? Somebody remind me, because my brain's all frazzled today because I had a lot of stuff on my mind. USC 18 USC codes under the deprivation of rights under the color of law, and it's those things exist because the legislative body does recognize at times that there are places where there are failures happening and they need to be addressed. And unfortunately, there are also laws that are passed that do, frankly, violate the Constitution, and the Supreme Court doesn't do anything about it, right? Look, the Supreme Court looks at the Constitution, looks at every single measure of gun control, and says, oh, well, for the most part, that's okay. We don't agree with this, but for this part, we're okay with that on. And so we have to be able to and willing to adjust and use the tools that are there. And so, like in the case of law enforcement, and let's just address what I've been speaking to here. I put the video out last Friday, I put it out on Monday from a dash cam video of Rochester, Minnesota Police Department officer speeding on the highway, and he was only probably doing 5 to 7 miles an hour over the speed limit, but according to Minnesota state statutes, he's not exempt from obeying Okay, have a good day, Ro. Thanks for stopping in and driving it up in the algorithm. Appreciate it. You can move on if you don't want to be part of it. I'm perfectly fine with that. The founder's oversight was non-inclusion of the sunset for all laws. Yeah, that's definitely an oversight. But when you look at the way cops handle traffic, and there again, this is in general how we should look at everybody in public service, frankly. But using the example of the Rochester police officer last Friday and the video that I put up on Monday, it was clear he was speeding. He was in violation of Minnesota state statutes, and there is a very clear Minnesota state statute that says that all emergency vehicles, which includes law enforcement, must have, if they're going to exceed the speed limit, it must be in response to an emergency, and they must have activated, in the case of law enforcement, lights and sirens. And a lot of people get really bent out of shape when you point out that cops are speeding, even if it's 1 to 2 miles an hour over the speed limit. They get really bent out of shape when you point it out. Bip, Tav, are you guys arguing? Please don't argue. So when we apply the law in Minnesota that says that to officers, it's very clear that they have an expectation to maintain the laws that they enforce at all times. That means if the speed limit is 55, they don't go a shred a shred of a fraction of a hair over the speed limit. They better not. Because a cop, when he's in a bad mood, he can pull you over. He can pull you over for anything if he's having a bad day, right? Because all they need is reasonable articulable suspicion that you might be doing something. And oftentimes it's speed or seatbelts and whatnot. And when they are allowed to break the law that, and this is a key, when they're allowed to violate the law that says they're required to obey that traffic code, then there is no law that's applicable to them, but they go a step further. And the step that they use is enacting a policy in their agency that says when possible or reasonable, all officers and deputies, troopers, yada, 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 will, in this department or whatnot, will maintain all laws at all times, except for the following exceptions, based, and I'm paraphrasing, I've read a massive amount of policies from a massive amount of agencies just in the state of Minnesota alone, and I guarantee you that somewhere in your state there are laws on the books requiring law enforcement to maintain traffic code unless they're responding to an emergency, and if they are an emergency, they must run codes, light, and sirens. I guarantee you, in your state somewhere, there's a law that says that. But how they get around that law is then their policy enacts, or their agency enacts a policy that says, except for the situation. And so in the state of Minnesota, what they point to are Minnesota's POST board, Police Officer Standards and Training. This is very consistent. You could tell that they all got together and adopted a lot of these policies. So the question that we have is, are cops exempt from the law if their policy says they're exempt from the law? And now, this question is for everybody. And Jesse, thank you very much, man. I understand the difference between codes and laws, trust me, but I'm speaking broadly because there are people out there who don't always understand the difference. Jesse, thank you for joining the channel. You rock, my brother. Thank you. I appreciate it. When you look at how they're getting around these things, you have to ask yourself, if you're a supporter of law enforcement and you're in this chat, and when I mean a supporter, I mean a person who will defend a cop no matter what at all times, or if you believe that cops should automatically just get the benefit of the doubt in every situation, you are a supporter. Then if you believe that policy can circumvent or trump law, put a 1 in the chat. I know what his real name is, Bib. So yeah, you can't time me out, Bib. That's not funny. So if you really do believe that cops can use policy to trump laws that regard their behavior, then what you have to realize is that we are being, for lack of better terminology, we are being governed by the lawless, right? You are being governed by the lawless, period, if that's what you believe. And I do not want to live in a country, I don't want to live in any place where laws that are to be applied to the enforcers will in any way, shape, or form be circumvented by the policies that they create for themselves to be free from the very laws that enforce and govern their behavior. And that's exactly the argument that people are making. And some of this is being brought up by the fact that people in the Rochester area are, and I think this should be all across the United States, When you are aware, and so like Tav's in here, and others who have been around, Tav, Bip, Snarky's in here. We haven't seen Jugs. Has Jugs been in here today? I haven't seen Jugs. But when you're aware of the story of Olivia Flores, who was murdered by Minnesota State Patrol Trooper Shane Roper on May 18th, when you are fully aware of that entire story, and that story is on this channel, and I haven't seen AVA either. Where's AVA? You tell them to get their asses in here. What's my OnlyFans? That's special access only, and you have to become a channel member to get my OnlyFans. So, oh, very funny, Don. So a lot of people in the Rochester area are fed up with the Minnesota State Patrol and how they get away with continuing to drive like asshats in the Rochester area. And somebody posted a picture of Minnesota State Patrol squad in a group on Facebook and said, I turned this officer in, or this trooper in, for driving this way, this way, this way, and this way. And the statists came out of the woodwork, and they absolutely started defending every single action of the trooper, saying maybe he was responding to a domestic, maybe he was on his way to a suicidal call, on and on and on and on and on. And when I posted, like, look, no, they have a duty according to the law to follow the law. This is a law that regards them following the law, or traffic codes if you prefer that. And yes, it's an important distinction, because traffic code does not become criminal, doesn't become law until you exceed a certain standard. They all pointed to policies within agencies that said, we have the opportunity to violate the law that regards the law that we are supposed to enforce. And that we have to let sink in. We absolutely have to let that sink in. When you think about what that says for public servants in general, that they can enact laws for themselves, or enact for themselves policies that give them the permission to violate the law, that tells them they have to obey the law. As I said earlier, we are being governed by the lawless. Now, everybody talks about how they're terrified of the word anarchy, right? You hear people bring up, oh, I don't want to live in anarchy. Without law enforcement, we would live in anarchy. Without laws, we would live in anarchy. There would be chaos in the streets. Folks, you are being governed by the lawless. You are being governed by the anarchist. And when I say anarchist, the absolute, very foundational and in-your-face reality of what actual violent anarchism is are public sector employees saying, we have created a policy that tells us that we don't have to obey that law, that gives us the permission to violate the law, that gives us the permission to violate the law that governs the law that we are supposed to be obeying. And this ties in part and parcel with qualified immunity. Now, one of the biggest mistakes about qualified immunity that people make is that qualified immunity automatically means cops cannot be charged with a crime if they commit that crime in the commission of their duties, or in the action of performing their duties as cops. That's not qualified immunity. Okay? Qualified immunity protects cops if they're following, this is key, if they're following the policies and the procedures and as best established practices of their agencies and previous court decisions. Okay? It protects them from the financial obligation in a lawsuit. Even if they lose the lawsuit, they are protected. Protected from the financial burden of paying off a lawsuit. And qualified immunity needs to end. It needs to stop. But qualified immunity and these policies that are being enacted that are giving permission to cops and other public servants to break the laws are not the same thing. But they allow, if you will, because remember, qualified immunity, and this is very important, qualified immunity says if they're following the policies and procedures of the agency and the best practices of the agency and prior court decisions, then qualified immunity will attach and apply. So we've got a twofold problem. We have a massive twofold problem. The first is that qualified immunity exists at all. The second is that agencies have, in one fell swoop, created for themselves the ability to, one, grant every officer qualified immunity by putting into policy the permission from the agency without any oversight from any elected servant, from any court. They have put into their own policies permission to break the very goddamn laws that govern their behavior. So now not only does their policy and procedure continue to protect them in qualified immunity issues, it has now made them the very violent anarchist that all of you are so terrified about when you hear people talk about massive police reform or even doing away with law enforcement altogether. This is foundationally and fundamentally the problem with our U.S. Republic. This is why we have lost the Republic, because it's not just leftists. It is not just the leftists that are against us, folks. If you happen to be a conservative style libertarian, a right of center libertarian, if you happen to be paleo-conservative, paleo-libertarian like I am, if you happen to be a standard traditional normie-con, and you guys know I use that term in an affectionate way most of the time, a standard traditional normie-con, vote GOP most of the time, all your life kind of person, you have to understand the leftists are not your only enemy. Your other enemies are the people who are back the blue at all costs. They are your enemy because they are the ones that are giving and encouraging this violence and this anarchy that the public servants are creating by giving themselves permission to not follow any of the cotton-picking laws that they're supposed to be there enforcing. That should terrify you. The anarchy that you should be afraid of is the anarchy that comes at the hands of the state. The anarchy that's brought about and enforced by the threat of force by the state. They live in an anarchy. You live in subjection to their anarcho-tyranny. I'm over here telling you, you need to be an actual individualist. You need to be an actual anarcho-capitalist, a person who looks at all of those things. I actually support anarchy, Ham, just so you're aware. I just don't support anarcho-tyranny that comes at the hands of the government, of the state. Those are the people that are dangerous anarchists. And they prove that they are anarchists because they refuse to abide by the very laws that tell them how they are to behave. and then they give themselves permission to violate those laws by writing into policy permission, or not right permission, by writing into policy everything they need to defend their violation of this. Look, I don't care who you vote for. I don't care if you're voting for Donald Trump. I don't care if you're voting for Kamala Harris. I don't care if you're voting for anybody at the top of the ticket. You're wrong. You're wrong. Because the focus should be locally. We're never going to make a change. Voting for Kamala, voting for Trump, you're not changing anything. You're not saving this republic if you keep focusing all of your attention on the centralized power. Your votes need to be going local. You need to be finding candidates who are going to start looking at these policies, who are going to start looking at these procedures, who are going to start looking at the laws, looking at the codes, looking at the ordinances, and saying enough is enough. No more laws. No more giving us permission to violate the law. We are going to start abiding by the law. That's what's going to happen. And that will only happen if you focus where the elections count the most and where they matter. City councils, mayors, county commissions, school boards. That's where it matters. And you need to start finding people who will fill those positions and will look at the laws that cops use to ignore the law, because they now have a policy that says that this law says we can ignore this law because the policy is in place. That shit's got to end. It's got to stop. But it's never going to stop if the only conversation that you ever have is, what about my constitutional rights? What about the first 10 amendments? What about, those things are important. Natural law is even more important. Natural rights are even more important than that. Understanding the philosophy of natural rights and natural law is incredibly important. We have to know all of these things. We need people to understand these things. But what matters is applying this where it matters the most. And if your only argument is ever about, what about my constitutional rights? You're always going to lose. You're always going to lose. Because there's always going to be somebody who's always going to come up with a policy or a court decision that says why your constitutional rights don't matter in this situation and why they can be limited. They'll find a policy that gives them permission to do it. Ask my friend Lisa Hansen. A judge ordered her to not bring up the Constitution in her defense of herself in court. Ordered her, threatened her with criminal penalties if she did it. I was forced to testify against her, and I didn't really testify against her. I didn't really have anything to say. But I was on the stand, and before I got on the stand, I was ordered to not bring up anything about the Constitution, or I would be held in contempt of court. What is contempt of court? It's a policy. There's no jury for contempt of court. There's no remuneration for contempt of court. It's just whatever the judge decides. Just whatever the judge decides. Whatever he wants or she wants, they get. And I'm going to be helping somebody tell a story about another situation where this is happening here in the state of Minnesota. And you know who you are because you're in the chat. So we have got to start focusing on what really matters and taking these fights down to where they matter the most. So folks, I'm going to go hit the shower and you don't get to go along for that. Well, some of you might want to, but I'm going to go hit the shower and I'm going to go and enjoy my evening. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I really appreciate all the channel memberships that popped up today. Thank you so much. That's amazing. I appreciate the mods that are here. Bip and Tav, work it out. You guys are both way too important to me and to the channel. I don't want to see you guys fighting. I love you both. And once again, channel members will get a link to my OnlyFans. Yes. It's all feet and me talking about Jefferson. But that's a different conversation for a different time. This like, I don't care who wins between Iran and Israel. I just don't want Americans to be part of that war at all. That's what matters to me. Jay, if there's something you really need help with, and this is a legitimate request, you can reach out to me at mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com, or you can also reach out to Scars. Scars would love to help you as well if there's a legitimate need. So there's that. Once again, Spike Cohen coming on in a couple of weeks. Once he gets back and settled in from everything he's been doing. And I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate the views. I appreciate the feedback. I even appreciate the trolls most of the time, because you just drive me up in the algorithm. There's a lot of people watching right now and who I haven't seen in a really long time, and I miss your faces. And I miss talking to you, and I miss helping you. But one of you knows we're going to be working to tell another part of the story from the Owatonna area, and that's going to be an absolutely fire conversation, and we're going to probably be doing a two-parter on that. And to 507, I can't wait to connect with you on the other project. So until next time, my friends, fight for your freedom, it is yours. Fight for your liberty, it belongs to you. I love you guys. Say it with me. Sic Semper Tyrannis.